On a quiet farm in Bavaria, 6 people were slaughtered with a single tool. But the most chilling part isn't the murder, it's what came after. For several days, evidence suggests roughly 3. The killer lived among the dead. Meals were cooked, livestock were fed, and the farmhouse carried on as if its true owners had never been silenced. This happened at Hinterkaifeck, a small Bavarian farmstead. The murders took place on the evening of March 31st, 1922. Days later, the bodies were discovered. But by then, someone had already erased time itself, tearing that very date from the farmhouse calendar. If you enjoy vivid mysteries and deep visuals, like and subscribe. It helps us bring these stories to life. The question is not only who could do this, but how the trap was first set. Why did each family member walk into the barn, one by one, never to return? On that night, the barn stood waiting, silent, unlit, and open. This is where the first footsteps went in and never came back out. The sequence of the killings, as later pieced together, suggests a pattern too deliberate to be chance. Each family member was drawn separately into the barn, where a heavy tool struck them down before they could raise alarm. There were no cries heard in the night, no interruptions long enough to halt what was happening just a few yards from the farmhouse. 4 bodies, Andreas Gruber, his wife Cecilia, their daughter Victoria, and the young Cecilia, would later be found piled together, partially hidden under hay and a wooden door. Unsettling signs had already been noticed in the days before. Andreas himself reported tracks in the snow that came from the forest, but never returned. Keys to the house had gone missing, and sounds from the attic unnerved the family. These details paint a picture not of sudden ambush, but of a presence lying in wait, gathering knowledge about the household routines. Whoever swung the weapon worked with precision. The blows were delivered by a farm mattock, a tool like a pickaxe, used again and again. Evidence points to multiple skull fractures. 8 wounds on the elder Cecilia's head, 9 on Victoria's. The younger Cecilia not only suffered blunt trauma, but appears to have lived for hours after her injuries, in such agony that she tore out clumps of her own hair. There was no panic spreading through the house, no mad sprint to escape, only a grim spiral, one family member after another, swallowed by the barn's darkness. The weapon itself carries its own strange footnote. In the initial investigation, it was not recovered at the scene. Years later, when the farmstead was finally demolished, a blood-stained mattock was discovered hidden in the attic, a chilling reminder left embedded in the house as if it belonged there. The barn turned from a place of labor into a place of entrapment. The still air muffled movement, the heavy beams above absorbed sound. What makes this mysterious is the patience displayed. The victims came willingly, perhaps out of duty or curiosity, searching for the person who had just vanished moments before them. The murderer relied on routine and familiarity, knowing they would follow their instincts directly into danger. And when the barn was silent, the violence did not stop. Inside the farmhouse itself, 2-year-old Joseph was killed in his cot, and Maria Baumgartner, the maid who had arrived only that same day, was murdered in her room. 4 faces in the barn, 2 more in the house, a farm tool wielded without hesitation, and then silence. Yet silence was not truly what followed. Anyone approaching the farm in the days after would have seen smoke curling from the chimney. Animals were fed. Meals were prepared. The page for March 31st was torn from the calendar, freezing time in a grim gesture. These traces reveal that someone remained there, living in the house while 6 bodies lay close by. At the heart of this chapter is not just the brute act of slaughter, but the choice to stay behind afterward. That decision bends the crime into something even more disturbing. The barn killings ended in a single night. But what lingers is the eerie continuation of daily life in their aftermath. The killings took place on the evening of 31st March, 1922, but the bodies were not discovered until 4th April. In that gap, investigators concluded someone occupied the farm, feeding animals, cooking meals, tending fires, and moving freely among the dead. The most chilling part is not how they died, but that someone lived beside them afterward. The case remained unsolved, in part because the early investigation was undermined. Neighbors and curious visitors entered the site, handled the bodies, and even cooked meals inside, contaminating evidence. Forensic practice in 1922 was limited. Fingerprints were rarely collected, leaving police with little to build from. The official file was closed in 1955, and the last recorded questioning took place in 1986. A review in 2007 noted the investigation's thoroughness, but also its shortcomings. Later teams even named likely suspects privately, but withheld those names out of respect for surviving families. Subscribe and turn on notifications to keep exploring mysteries like this with us.